We filed the petition, and that triggers, according to the Endangered Species Act, several hard deadlines, statutory deadlines, which Fish and Wildlife Service does not have the opportunity to negotiate. And one of them is that 90 days after they receive the petition, they have to formally announce in the Federal Register whether it looks like there is sufficient quality of information in the petition to investigate further. Well, that was the first of about a half a dozen deadlines that they missed. They were supposed to make that determination in April. They finally made the determination in December of that year. And between when we submitted the petition for listing and the so-called 90-day finding, there was a big fish kill in the pool. So there was very, very clear evidence that we had a problem. We didn't have to exaggerate anything at all. Everybody could see it with their own eyes. The next year, there was a deadline, December of 1993, where the so-called one-year finding is supposed to be made, where the Fish and Wildlife Service says, yeah, this really is a very strong case for listing the species, or no, it's not. That also went by the wayside. So they didn't publish their so-called one-year finding until the following year, 1994. They had, in September of 94, the obligation to make a final decision, and that didn't happen. So as I think you can see the pattern here. In 1995, state government started to get involved. Governor Bush requested a 6-month delay to allow the state to develop its own plan of action. And that's not an option for the Fish and Wildlife Service, according to law. But Interior Secretary Babbitt, who is a Bill Clinton appointee, this is a Democratic administration that is in principle favorable towards conservation, he grants a 6-month postponement to allow people to do further studies, Fish and Wildlife and the state and so forth, bowing to political pressure. The Texas Natural Resource Conservation Commission came out with a statement that says that there's no data showing that there's any conservation problem here, whatever. In June of that year, U.S. Senator from the state of Texas, Kay Bailey Hutchison, was able to pass through Congress a moratorium on the listing of any endangered species in the entire United States. So you have to appreciate how threatened some political interests in the Austin area felt that they were able to escalate this to the federal level and absolutely shut down all endangered species listings in the country just to stop the listing of the Barton Springs salamander. I mean, that's impressive. You have to give them credit for having some clout there, right? So anyways, there are meetings, constant stream of meetings between the state and the city and the biologists, including us. Really nothing happens. They're basically not letting us testify. They're letting their developer lawyers testify, but not the biologists. And let's see. So, goodness, how much time do we have? In November, Save Our Springs and Barbara Mahler and I filed our first lawsuit against Babbitt in federal court, saying, really, these guys have to make a decision. And Judge Bunton of Midland, he ruled in favor of the salamander. He ordered Babbitt to make a final decision within 14 days. Babbitt appealed the decision to the very conservative Fifth Circuit Court in New Orleans, which put on hold, or so-called stayed, the Bunton ruling that a 14-day action had to happen. So let's see, it wasn't until the following year, we're into now 1996, that the Fish and Wildlife Service drafts a rule suggesting that this salamander is in fact endangered. In response to intense lobbying from the state of Texas and developers and others, they then withdrew their proposed listing a month later. So they got totally backed down by corrupt political interests. In October of 96, we filed the second lawsuit challenging the withdrawal of the listing. Oh, let me just back up here. I mentioned that, actually one very Austin story. I mentioned that Kay Bailey Hutchison was able to get all endangered species listings halted for a period of months. There's a finite period. And Bill Bunch and Barbara Mahler and I were having a fun evening at a dive bar called the Austin Outhouse that was just off campus. And it's about 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and we're dancing and drinking probably a couple of too many margaritas. And all of a sudden we went, oh my God, Hutchison's moratorium expired today. And we got back in the office the next morning and wrote the next lawsuit to get the species moved on to the endangered list. So anyways, we got several legal challenges filed. In 1997, so I don't know if you are keeping track of the years here, but we started in 92. We're now 5 years, not 1 year, which is what the law says, 5 years into this whole process. And the court, in response to our second lawsuit, said, yeah, Fish and Wildlife Service has exceeded all these deadlines. You now have 30 days to make a final decision. No screwing around this time. And in April 1997, that finally happened. That's the short version of the story.